Sidelines with Rob Browne. Talk sporty to me.
All right, Rob Browne here with you on this Monday morning. We're broadcasting live from Orange Beach, Alabama. Got to rotate back to the real world, as people always say. God, it is so nice down here. The Gulf Coast is it's the most beautiful beaches in the world. It's crystal white beaches. How can you not love it down here? Unbelievable seafood, the great people. It is just awesome. I'm looking out over Ono Island and into Wolf Bay, and there's it's like glass right now. It looks like Lake Placid. Not that I've ever been to Lake Placid, but the term placid means calm. Hey, we got a great show in store for you today. We're going to kick off. Doug Dean's going to join us from Birmingham. Chris Lee checks in from Nashville in hour number 2. Franz Beard will be in with his daily thoughts, his pithy thought. In fourth segment, we'll be joined by Wess Moore up in Little Rock, ESPN 103.7 The Buzz. Look, if you're an SEC fan, you're probably right now going, holy cow, this is frustrating. But look, a long season to go. But I will say this, we talk 25 shows a month, over 300 shows a year, college football, basketball, baseball, recruiting. Appreciate everybody that listens and watches. And let me say this again about one of our sponsors, rumbleboxinggym.com, 1835 Union Avenue, Midtown Memphis, across from the Walgreens. Let me just break it down. They're open every day of the week. Weekdays open up about 5:15 a.m. They have classes, 48 people in these classes with great instructors. You do all the jumping jacks, star jacks, planks, push-ups, dips, dumbbell work. Then you hit those bags. It's 15 3-minute sessions. Check them out on our website, rumbleboxinggym.com. They also have student discounts. You can bring corporate groups in, call in advance. And Camp Lee, my friend, is the owner. This is the first of 3 locations she's going to put into the Memphis market. But it is an incredible workout. Boxing engages both sides of the brain, uses your feet. There's so many benefits to boxing and practicing the workouts. It will put you in incredible shape. rumbleboxinggym.com. And let me get started right now. Get over here to Doug Dean. And Doug, you can't look, some teams won over the weekend, but the SEC right now, you'd have to say that the standout victory is Ole Miss going on the road in a tough environment and beating Tulane. How many times, Doug, do you and I say this, and you are so good at pinpointing this in the preseason? People look at schedules June 20th or July 15th, and they project what they want to happen or what they think is going to happen. But when you start playing the games, everything changes because you're dealing with people. If you don't think Ole Miss is always going to score a lot of points and be competitive with Lane Kiffin, you don't know football. If you're an Auburn fan and you look and say, wow, Auburn struggled to beat Cal. I just got this text from a friend of mine. They give scholarships too. They wanted to win. That's a tough place. You're traveling across the country. A lot of factors. Auburn found excuses to win. Look, Tennessee, they did what they had to do. Georgia did what they had to do. We'll get to the other games later. But, Doug, beautiful Monday morning. A lot of great football to talk about. Let's go.
Thank you. Good morning, Rob, Mildred.
How are you?
Oh, Mildred. Yeah, seems like and I bet you're going to agree with me, almost every college football season, somewhere typically in the first 3 or 4 Saturdays, you have inexplicable clubs close to being upsets or actual upsets. And then, the saying when you're programming a computer, garbage in, garbage out. I think the reason we have this problem is, and it's really not that surprising, is over the course of when the bowl games, the national championship playoff ends, you have months for all the analysts who have to write about something to make assumptions and try to, extrapolate going into the next season. and they abysmally fail. And I'm no different. I mean, you're limited by what's available to us.
Mhm.
They abysmally fail at the garbage that's going in their analytical computer, their brain, their actual computer. It takes, really a full month of September typically where you get some real competition to sift things out. And so we're wrong. I mean, we're badly wrong in some cases, and we extrapolate. And then you see fans, and I was guilty of it, going from what I saw in Auburn versus UMass, which is a team that was, as the game wore on, they started finding themselves. And I took the bait that Coach Hugh Freeze had invented the game of college football, and he was not human, and his coaching staff was not human. Peyton Thorne was going to be elite after a few games, and then our defense would struggle. What did we get? I was being linear, and it's dangerous making a linear forecast from one point to the next data point. There's so many variables change. I was wrong because the Auburn had to win with defense, and I don't think this is an elite Auburn defense, but I think they're going to be a little above average when they come to play if they have a good game plan. And Rob, the interesting stat, if you want, for your Auburn listeners or college football listeners, this won't hold up. But if you look at national third down conversion defense, Auburn Tigers are ranked 5th in the nation right now, only giving up 0.125 on third downs. And that's a good sample size of third downs. Granted, you can throw out the first game. Alabama, and I'm sure Coach Saban is painfully aware, is hello to the doggies.
Yeah.
Coach Saban is painfully aware Alabama's 65th in the nation, and Georgia's ranked 6th in the nation on third down conversions. So these stats will moderate and regress to the mean as we get enough games under our belt. But I don't know. And then if you're an Auburn fan, this was one of those rare weekends someone out there calls a double eagle. Rob, you've heard that one. An Alabama loss and an Auburn win. And oddly enough, the last time that happened, which is a credit to Alabama, rarely losing at all, right?
Yeah.
Time it happened was 2014, the Katy Perry Ole Miss game, coached by Hugh Freeze, when Ole Miss knocked off Alabama in a pretty big upset, and Auburn blew out LSU 41-7 that same day.
Yeah. No, I think those are great points. But I will say that in my other life as a financial advisor, I study trends. It's funny, a lot of times a stock will sell off when they report really good earnings. And I learned that from our head of technical market analysis, Al Goldman at AG Edwards years ago. Buy at the wake, sell at the wedding. But those trends, there is a lot of stuff you can extrapolate from there that makes sense. And you're right, that third down conversion. Ron Roberts' defense, it's called the creeper defense. He developed it when he was at, I think, Delta State, Southeast Louisiana. He's taken it around, but it's really good at messing up RPOs. Did you notice how quickly Cal made a change at quarterback and was just kind of trying anything they could do? Again, I'm not saying Auburn has an elite defense, but they couldn't do anything.
Yeah.
And Eugene Asante is the best looking linebacker I've seen at Auburn, most dominant, maybe since Takeo Spikes.
Well, I think I'm gonna throw a yellow flag on you for just a little bit of hyperbole invoking. Yeah. But I think for 2 games in, let's invoke Deshaun Davis. I'm hearing that comparison a lot now before the season's out. If he keeps playing like this, and I think Ron Roberts will do some things to set him up to have opportunities. If those D linemen can keep the blockers off of him on the second level, we've seen that he's what we've talked about on the show before. That one of Coach Dye's great assistants, you'll catch his name in a minute, told me, I don't recruit just physical size or whatever or measurables, Doug. I want a football player, and it was Coach Daniels, I believe. And so, Asante is one of these. And didn't you love his quote? He said, when you have chaos, there is also opportunity. This guy's a damn philosopher.
Yeah.
On our Mike linebacker position. And so he said, we had the opportunity, since our offense was struggling, to throw cold water on Cal, and he said, "We are our brother's keeper." Man, wouldn't Rob, if you're a coach, wouldn't you love to bottle and clone that attitude?
Oh yeah, and he played at North Carolina. He's from Alexandria, Virginia,
Yeah,
and Auburn had a linebacker from there years ago, and Karibi Dede. I
yeah,
remember him, and I'm going back and I'm looking at what I saw, and I'm not saying he's Takeo Spikes, but you're right. Deshaun Davis out of Mobile, one of my favorite of all time, but he's just a really good guy. That he's speed, he's aggressive. I saw some things out of Auburn as the game went along. They found excuses to win. Uh, didn't even you and also you had talked a lot about. Let's talk about Rivaldo Fairweather.
yeah.
What a mismatch. He's a freak.
That's the only. Sorry if I walked on you. That's
No,
the only thing in my last newsletter. You got to make. You can't
yeah,
say, "Not sure. We'll have to wait and see." No one gives a crap to hear that kind of waffling. So you make a pick on a game, and I had it almost everything completely wrong, other than Auburn winning. I thought they would win by double digits. I had that badly wrong, and I thought our offense would have to score in the high 30s to win. All of that was wrong. The one thing I got right was I said I'm 100% certain we'll be invoking the name of Rivaldo Fairweather on Sunday and Monday. And we are, even though they only targeted him about 3 critical times, he certainly showed why you've got to increase that number going forward.
yeah. And I'm getting a lot of questions from people right now about Auburn's 2 quarterback system. I mean, it worked against UMass, but it's not going to work against big time competition because it's too predictable. And I just hope Hugh Freeze isn't trying to pacify the locker room to keep it together, because Robbie Ashford seems like a wonderful guy. He's a great athlete, but I think maybe he can follow the example of Cody Burns and look at another position, because Peyton Thorne, I don't think he likes this too much. I don't think he came down here to split. He could have stayed where he was. Again, the coaches got to decide, but there's it's not going to work against big time competition, which Auburn will be facing.
Yeah, and let me answer that or comment on that excellent, very on point question that, by the way, I will inject one of the funnier things I saw was, Rob, I'm not 30 years old anymore, and neither are you. Not older, I assume. You know, but, the I have been watching Auburn football a long time, and if memory serves, that's the first time I've seen Auburn play on Sunday.
Yeah,
Well, now, if you want to be a real technocrat and say, well,
yeah,
Pacific time, it was still Saturday, I don't care. I go by Lake Martin time
yeah.
this last weekend. But I slugged a Monster energy drink and actually made it to the end of the game. And Auburn did their part to keep me awake with a bunch of incompetent offensive play. But I want to
Yeah.
answer that text question this way, or comment this way. I think, and I'll be the first in line to sing Hugh Freeze's praises when he's earned it. And I thought in recruiting and preparation for that first game, he earned it. But it was abysmal from preparation week to comments in the media whining that this is a long way to travel. I hope we never schedule this game. And I felt like I didn't feel this way when he was saying it. I thought, no big deal. We'll go take care of business. But if the head coach isn't careful, his comments can sort of psychologically transmit to the team. And they say, well, this must be a weird, I'm sure my body's going to feel weird because coach said that, and as we got to travel 5,000 miles and whatever the distance is, and our bodies won't be normalized. And then on the sidelines, and of course, Cal's fierce play had something to do with this, and their defensive coordinators planned putting 8 and 9, at times 9 in the box, had something to do with it. Franz looked uncomfortable and a little panicked on the sidelines, and I believe what was going on with this quarterback carousel, which did not work. I didn't see a single time where it looked like it worked, like Red Zone Robbie did in the first game. I think he was not uh, our backs when we weren't getting a penalty, and he was not seeing Thorne have receivers that get separation. So a little panic set in, And he said, well, I know Robbie's got athletic ability. Maybe he can break a long run and we'll score and we'll settle down. And the problem is they've only set Robbie up, it looks like, for a couple of plays with that student body left or right. And good defenses are going to now be prepared, and we're going to be lucky to get much out of that. So I think the experiment of the juggling the quarterbacks needs to be brought. I would ride with Peyton Thorne all game against Samford and let him get in a rhythm and get the snakes out of his head that if I make one mistake, they're going to send Robbie in.
Yeah, here's another observation from Isaac Asimov in Notasulga, Alabama. Noted philosopher, you might say, genius. Not sure you noticed that during the timeout, Peyton Thorne lobbied Coach Hugh Freeze to put him back in and throw the fade to 13. Maybe, just maybe, that will be the turning point for the QB situation. Interesting. Yeah. From Isaac Asimov.
I am basing this on reading tea leaves, so there's a margin of error here. But I've talked to a few people, but I think Philip Montgomery, for whatever reason, of course, the head coach is ultimately responsible for, putting his stamp on the game plan before, the week of practice starts. But I think they had a critical assumption that was flawed. They thought they could, with our offensive line and elite running back, we could get 3 or 4 yards running anytime we wanted. We couldn't. But where I think Philip Montgomery called kind of a scared game, especially first half. Yeah. And because they've told us time and again, this offense supposedly is built that the quarterback reads, if they have more helmets on our helmets at the line of scrimmage, you're checking out of that run play and you're finding the quick read or the, attack zone in the middle, which we did very little of. And so I think when you play scared like that and your quarterback starts to feel like, hey, I need to play not to make a mistake, then it's hard to get in any flow with your offense and get it to your playmakers. But even at that, there should be no excuse first half for not throwing some 50-50 targeted balls at Fairweather and maybe even J-Fair.
I agree with that. Another observation from a fan, Auburn's got possibly the best and the deepest running back room since 03 and 04. I think Auburn's doing a good job of rotating players in and out. Doug, is there one player in particular with Jarquez Hunter coming back that really stood out that you think will get most of the carries this year? Or do you see Auburn continuing to do the running back by committee? Very interesting question and statement from a listener.
Yeah, I think, I've heard a few fans say, well, Jarquez is now the running back in second string, maybe third. And I think that's a little silly because it would be understandable that in terms of just what it feels like, the effort and what you have to do to perform at a high level. When you've been sitting out as long as Jarquez had, let's give him a mulligan. I still expect him to be really powerful, valuable, make a bunch of plays for us. But to me, the two, and I almost feel bad not giving credit to Batee because he barely got any touches, the little guy. But the two that sure seem to have another gear are Alston and the freshman Jeremiah Cobb. In fact, if Jeremiah Cobb is third string right now, man, it's going to be hard as the season progresses. I think what you're going to see is him every time he gets a touch, something special happens, whether it's his vision or speed or ability to make someone miss, juke and jive. I think he's going to. So it's nice to have this debate. It's what you call a welcome problem, right? 3 or 4 backs that all on a given game, one of them might have the hot hand. So I wouldn't try to force myself to declare one back's going to get 3/4 of the carries. Keep them all fresh and see on a given game who's got the hot hand.
The old wishbone philosophy. You just spread the carries around and you keep healthy bodies. And Doug, that seems to be really a trend with a lot of the college running backs now is they're being told by agents and the message is coming from the top down. You might have 4 or 5 years in the NFL, so you need to come in as fresh as you can, show enough on tape to get the NFL scouts interested and Jim Nagy to invite you to the Mobile Senior Bowl and take it from there. But I think there's truth in that.
And you know what? This is great banter, by the way. I appreciate the questions from your audience. What is always interesting And a huge thing that offensive coaches especially have to manage is sometimes early season, you're playing opponents that have great coaches and they've got some studs on defense, and they will come up with a defensive plan that baffles you. And you better believe that, I mean, Samford, I mean, they can play whatever they want. It shouldn't be close, but you never know. But Texas A&M, you can count on them using some of Cal's defensive plan. Everybody we play, until we show that we can make you pay if you're, at the last, just before the snap, bringing a lot of extra bodies up in the box. If they're going to show that look, Auburn's next plan needs to be, we're agnostic. We don't care whether you want to stop our run or lay back and force us, try to go cover with 6 or 7 DBs. We're going to take where you're not, we're going to try to go. We're going to go where you ain't. And they didn't do that until really that touchdown drive in the second half. And again, I think some of it was self-inflicted when you start fumbling, getting penalties. Somebody misses a block, which happened to Miller once, and it was going to be a big play, but he whiffed on his block. Austin fumbled once, and the coaches were probably not calling the smartest game in the world. I think they thought we could go in there and just be the more physical, powerful SEC team and get out of there with a more conservative win, and they got in trouble, frankly. When you look at that, they had to miss 3 field goals and throw a pick in the end zone. Auburn was lucky to come out of there with a win. And I think even that first odd fumble by Peyton Thorne, the video I saw, I'm not so sure it wasn't a touchdown going the other way for Cal early in the game.
Yeah, no doubt about it. And missing 3 field goals with a guy that's got a really good, accurate leg. I think, too, that I noticed those fumbles with Auburn, the one late in the fourth quarter when Jarquez Hunter fumbled, man, run the play as fast as you can. What were you thinking? They just, all of them seemed like they had jet lag. And again, Hugh Freeze, don't ever telegraph and make statements like that, because that trickles down to your team. Why are we having to go across? You embrace it. Like Coach Dye used to say, I don't give a damn where we got to play. We got to play in the parking lot. We're going to be ready to play. And you've got to go on the road, and you've got to bring adversity to your opponent instead of waiting for it to come to you.
Yeah, you know what? The game, I bet even Coach Saban would say this, maybe reluctantly after all the accolades he gets.
Yeah.
Or pick any other, championship caliber, somebody that's on the short list of GOAT college football coaches. Once in a while, there's this game, Rob Browne, that the coaches don't have it right. But by God, you've got 1 or 2 key players who have leadership ability and talent and motivation, and they're a coach on the field. And you got that from, God knows you got it from Eugene Asante.
Yes.
He willed that, and there were others. Marcus Harris.
Oh, man.
He played a fantastic game on the front. Nixon, Nasili Kite, Falk, even Ken Lee, who had to go more because of an injury of Nehemiah Pritchett. And then on the offensive side, Fairweather was there. Once he got that 3rd down and 17, he was like sitting on his rear end to reach around the defender and grab the ball. A miraculous catch that could very well save Auburn's bowl eligibility this season as things progress. So sometimes players will find a way to go win a game in spite of the bad moves their coaches made.
Yeah, and the catch when Fairweather had to reach down, he's 6'5", and to reach down and to be able to have that body control, he's a superior athlete and a fierce competitor. But again, I go back to Rodan, the thinker, Eugene Asante. I mean, this guy's mature beyond his years. And, in crisis and chaos comes opportunity. I mean, you have to be a deep thinker to think like that. But that will spread around. He's the kind of guy who will put people in the right position to fill those gaps and all. But I'm with you, man. Marcus Harris, whose younger brother Malik Blockton is committed to Auburn now, the way he this is an observation, yes or no. The strength and conditioning program, the Auburn team, I have not seen them look this good physically in memory since Yachts was there in the peak of the Yachts years under Tuberville. These guys looked lean, mean, they're ripped, and they did not tire as the game wore on. Critical that Studzinski, Auburn strength coach, A+ so far.
Yeah, and I have broken my pledge, Rob, that the time would come about September. I'd quit taking cheap shots at Brian Harsin, but I got one more in my back pocket. Is there any doubt in anyone else's mind that if we had the same staff, and if obviously the roster wouldn't be greatly different, Auburn loses that one at Cal, probably significantly double-digit loss. And I think a big part of that is not only the talent Freeze brings in, but also the way they're going about. They're preparing them in the strength and conditioning program for actual football. They're not just doing bench presses that look good and skybar. They're trying to build agility and endurance and strength for football plays. And sometimes that's, upper body strength, but a lot of times it's just endurance that you've got to stay in there a few extra plays, you can do it. And I think there's a lot. This is, this is going to be across the entire SEC. Let's label it Overreaction Monday, Rob.
Oh.
Let me help my Bama. Let me help my Bama, brother. There is an overreaction that Alabama's now, because of what we saw against a damn good and well-coached Texas team. They saw where they fell short a year ago, and they went and tried to fix some of those holes, and they've got an elite quarterback in Ewers. When you give a guy like that time, and then the plan was to be super aggressive, but it's an overreaction to say this means Alabama's going to lose 3 games or worse. I don't see it, because you look across the SEC, Alabama's so physically powerful and talented. They only need to eliminate the dumb mistakes to probably be anywhere from a 7 to 10 point favorite, and probably or more in any of the SEC games that are ahead for them. We'll have to see about LSU. Do they start to look like that we thought? I am the Jimbo and Bobby Petrino honeymoon may be over, only game 2, but we'll have to likewise don't overreact to that. You'll learn more about A&M, won't we, in 2 weeks when Auburn goes there.
Absolutely agree with you. And it is Overreaction Monday. I felt like several weeks ago, just in my head, I said, I can see Texas going in and winning by a couple of touchdowns because they've got the better quarterback. And when we talked with Ken Capps on the show Friday and Saturday, I said, if it came down to quarterback versus quarterback, you got to give the edge to Quinn Ewers. Jalen Milroe's going to be a good one. That's only his 3rd start. That's a tough game to play. And once you get on the field, it really doesn't matter where you're playing. But Texas, they are being in the SEC, they're going to recruit better, especially on the front 7 defensively. They're going to start getting those linemen. And I hope you'll stay on with us, because Chris Lee from Vandy Rivals and the Southeastern 14 has a great show up in Nashville. Is going to be on with us in a couple of minutes. We'll get into this discussion.
Yeah.
But Doug, I agree with your points, man, about the strength and conditioning. Kevin Yoxel told me one time, I was down there with a friend of mine and Coach Tuberville, and they took us in the weight room, and he said, look, I said, how are y'all big on bench press or core strength? He said, well, football is a game played on your feet. So everything is core and strength and legs drive and all. And that said it right there. And he just mentally made those guys tougher. A big part of it in the 4th quarter is when you give up, that's a problem. And I've seen some things I saw in the LSU Florida State game, an interception late in the game that Florida State made, and the player's knee was down, but he ran it back. And the LSU player was just laying there kind of looking. He should have been up chasing that guy down. I watch body language, Doug.
Yeah.
It's very important, and it has everything to do with the demeanor and the atmosphere in the locker room.
Yeah, and I'm on a week now that we're playing actual games. There'll be a week or 2 here and there where my team hasn't opened, but I'm gonna select, if there is one, Rob, a internet post or tweet that was worthy for its insider humor, and for the Auburn fans, including me, who managed to stay up till 12:30 in the morning. Once DJ James, who's starting to look like an NFL caliber defensive back, made that game-sealing interception with I think a minute 40 left. You figure, well, then I looked up and I said, Cal's got 3 timeouts. So I said, we might have to hold on to our butts a little longer. Yeah. And then here's the tweet, though. He said, the way this game has gone, I doubt that Auburn can manage not screwing up for 104 seconds.
Hey, listen, I stayed up. I listened to the whole post game on the Auburn network. I think I went to bed about 2:30 or 3. I mean, we're down here at Orange Beach, and I've been watching football all day, pacing, looking out over the bay. I mean, you're right, the first Sunday game. Look, let's take a quick commercial break, Doug. Yeah. Great takes, great insight. Chris Lee up in Nashville is going to be back with us when we come out of the break. This is Monday's edition of Not Overreaction Monday on Sidelines.
Red River Ford and Toyota, located in Wynne, Arkansas. If you're in the market for a new or used car, truck, or SUV, call, go online, or drop by and see them. Located 45 minutes from Memphis, go off the 4-city exit on I-40 and go north about 15 minutes on Highway 1. Easy to work with and still believe in customer service. If you live out of town, they will deliver your vehicle to you. RedRiverFordToyota.com. Just see what they can do.
Strengthen your seed zone this spring with quality tillage equipment from House Industries. Located in Cherry Valley, Arkansas, House Industries specializes in manufacturing superior equipment that will minimize your downtime and keep you working in the field. To ensure the highest quality control, all design, fabrication, and testing takes place in a 99,000 square foot manufacturing facility located right here in the heart of the Delta. Locate your nearest House equipment dealer online at houseindustriesinc.com.
House Industries, breaking ground.
Sidelines with Rob Browne. Talk sporty to me.
All right, Rob Browne back here with you. And Doug, I'm going to let you, I'm going to bring in Chris Lee right now from Vandy Rivals and also Southeastern 14 up in Nashville. And Chris, let's get your opening statements real quick. I got to give Mallory a hug and the baby goodbye before they head back to Atlanta down here from the beach. So I'm going to step out for a second. Chris, this is Doug Dean, AU Dose in Birmingham. Chris Lee, met him up at Media Days. Great guy, first class in every respect, and proud to have you on this show.
Yes. Good morning, Doug. Presuming you've got some ties to the state of Alabama based on the previous conversation. It was certainly an interesting weekend in that state.
Yeah, you're kidding me. Yeah, I'm one of those Auburn guys, but I had my 3 daughters. One went to Alabama, 2, I got it 66% right, 2 went to Auburn. But I, for one, am watching Vanderbilt football with interest this year because this coach seems like he's determined to integrate a culture that is, no, we're not expected to win. We're going to go and play every game expecting to lose. We're going to play to win and continue to build and recruit. So tell us what you saw this Saturday.
Well, I was disappointed in what I saw, to be honest. I thought that the program was at a point where I think that's the biggest game Vanderbilt had had in 5 years. It had some ramifications. If Vanderbilt goes and beat Wake Forest, I think people sit up and take notice. I think at that point, they're favored to beat UNLV next week, which they are anyway, though not by much. All of a sudden, there's a chance to be 4-0. Instead, they went down. They threw an interception on the third play of the game. They fumbled a kick return or a punt return, I think right before the half that could have really given them a shot to be competitive going into halftime. I just didn't like what I saw from them, the turnovers, the mistakes, the things you've got to avoid if you're Vanderbilt. And frankly, the tackling effort was as bad as I've seen in a while. And I was surprised. It's not what I expected to see when they went to Winston-Salem.
But on the eye test, and I'm believe me, when you talk to an Auburn fan today, we understand what self-inflicted wounds looked like Saturday night out on the West Coast against the good. We'll see if they're great, a good Cal team. But did the Vanderbilt, did it look like a significant talent gap or more like self-inflicted mistakes when you watched it?
I think it's the latter, and while that's hard to swallow, maybe that's the good news. I think that under the radar, they have developed a really good receiving room. They've got Will Shepherd, who's one of the top guys in the conference. They've got a kid named Jaden McGowan, who now that he's healthy has gone back to his first half levels of production. He's run a kickoff back for a score this year, also had a 50-yard catch on Saturday. It was more run than catch. And they've got a kid named Logan or London Humphreys, who's a true freshman from Christ Presbyterian Academy, 10 miles or 10 minutes from campus. He had over 100 yards receiving. He's caught touchdowns in 2 of their 3 games. He was the state 100-meter sprint champion last year. Suddenly, they've got 3 guys at a minimum, and they've got probably another 2 or 3 that are serviceable SEC receivers. They've got a talented quarterback in A.J. Swan, although he's erratic. We saw a little bit of that. But, yeah, I mean, there's some seeds there. But I think the thing that puzzles everybody, and some of it is certainly talent, is that Clark Lee was the defensive coordinator at Notre Dame. And I think we expected 3 years in the defense would look better than it has, and it just hasn't been very good so far.
Let me ask you a question. My friend Bill James and Sheila James, their son, Christian James, defensive tackle I've known him since high school. He's a big kid. I know he's been injured, trying to come back from that. And hopefully by the 4th game, Bill thinks he'll be back. What are you hearing?
I haven't heard anything lately. I don't think he was on the depth chart last week. I would presume that maybe a return this weekend is possible. I think I'd heard in August that it was going to be probably a month or so. That they tend to be careful with these kind of things.
Yeah.
They've had some opponents that they look. A coach isn't going to come out and say it. Hey, we're holding out a kid against Alabama A&M because we know we can beat them. But, you know, I don't think he played against Wake Forest. That's probably a little telling that he's got a little ways to go. You know, look, I think if he's on the fence and they can use him against UNLV, that they've got to consider running him out there because that's a defense that just, again, has not shown up with any consistency and really, really leaked against the run last week.
Yeah. I mean, and he had 32 tackles last year. I think 4.5 tackles for loss, 3 sacks. For defensive linemen, Doug, those are big stats in today's world because the game runs away from you more than it comes to you. You don't see many defensive linemen in a 3-year career with 350 tackles. And you could see that back in the 80s and the 90s maybe.
Yeah, and I wanted to kind of pivot you to, since you follow Vanderbilt from the inside, the tremendous baseball program. You look at the total athletics program at Vandy, tremendous basketball over the years, and they're trying to get back to that. I think they will. But my question goes to under the new world order of NIL in college football and the fact that Vanderbilt would boast throughout the SEC one of the more affluent and generous, not only endowments, but generous donor bases. Because they graduate, and the reason you don't kid your Vandy friends is they're going to be your boss someday, right? But would you grade Vanderbilt football in terms of their big donor or maybe more widespread alumni and fan donor base as it relates to the notion of funding NIL?
Well, the weird thing is they're funding other things right now, and they're funding it to the tune of what I've heard some people say privately is they'll spend $1 billion on their facilities by the time they're done. I don't know if it'll be quite $1 billion, but it's going to be a lot, and everything over there is going to look a lot differently when it's done. But so you've got an appetite of people that'll put money into it. Now, the thing is, someone told me who's pretty well connected over there, and this is a couple years dated, so I don't know how much it's changed. They've got about 30 big donors that they tap in for different things. I think maybe 2 or 3 of those had some interest in sports. I think they've tapped into a couple more. I mean, they're getting the money from somewhere. It's not like Vanderbilt to go build stuff for sports if they don't feel like they can back it up with revenue funding. But the weird thing is, in the middle of while all they're doing this, the game has completely changed, as you guys know. They're not as competitive in the NIL space as they need to be. They're using it for retention. They had a couple of kids in CJ Taylor and Shepard who could have gone elsewhere for more money and chose not to. A couple other kids, it didn't work out as well. Jadaeus Richard, who they really could have used as the starting corner this weekend, was down at Miami as a reserve defensive back for that team. So they're going to be strategic about it. But I think they need the numbers got to be better. And I think everybody is sort of in this fog of where it's like, okay, we're finally funding all these things. and now everything's changed, and how do we react to that? And sometimes, it's funny how people that have got a lot of money want to spend it or not want to spend it. They might write a $50 million check for a football stadium. They might not want to spend 50 cents on NIL. So I don't know how that works out with the donors and everything, but I know right now they've got kind of a modest number in mind for NIL, and I don't think they're there yet.
Yeah, and I agree with you, Chris, because I'm a financial advisor on top of doing this show, and you get wealthy people that have the $50 million account that will have a panic attack over a $75 account fee or something. And it's funny how that stuff works. But I like Doug's take about Vanderbilt athletics overall. Living in Memphis, know a lot of Vanderbilt alumni. You find the right thing for them. And you talked about, Doug, Chris and I had this discussion at lunch at SEC Media Days. And, you've got that group of 30, 35 really big donors that Vanderbilt has. And those 35 people up in Nashville. And there's a lot of money in Davidson and Williamson County, and just among the Vanderbilt, fan base, alumni base overall. But baseball, Tim Corbin, almost 20 years he's been there. He's got a dynasty. That's an understatement, but Clark Lee seems, I like I got both of y'all. The best thing I've seen out of Clark Lee, when he was insulted and when people said, hey, got to be happy with that 5-7 last year, he thought that was patronizing. I like that. I mean, Clark Lee wants to win. And I'm glad you pointed out that criticism from you, because I respect what you say about Vandy. I'm glad you said it. You expected more in that Wake Forest game. I did too. I want them to win. They're in the SEC. It's good for the brand. Right now, we need all the wins we can get as a league.
Yeah, and look, to that, I'm on really good terms with Clark Lee. Really like the guy, respect the guy. He is a human being, he's a top 1% human being of people in this profession. And they listen to stuff. They know that the things I say aren't always probably what everybody wants to hear, but they respect it. And I think it's like-mindedness. I think it's also knowing that there's some things in the culture change over there that need to be aired if they're ever going to win ball games. I think sometimes we all know that getting better is a whatever. And your venture as a business owner, as a human being, some of that involves taking things that aren't easy to hear, but turning him into things. That's why he and I don't have a problem with things. He knows I say some things sometimes that probably strike close to home, but he also knows if they're going to get better, they need to hear it too.
Well, Chris, I know it. Coaches and players are cautioned they're cautioned to play one game at a time. I hope Coach Freeze and his staff really are committed to that after the way we looked Saturday night, escaping. So I saw Justin Ferguson call it a smash and grab, Rob. It was a theft to win that game. But we're not supposed to look ahead, but you and Rob and I are not coaches. So I'm just going to circle, and I bet Vanderbilt is circling November 4th. The Auburn Tigers come to Nashville, and that's sandwiched between Auburn having to play Mississippi State, which is often a physical game, and a week ahead of going to Fayetteville to play Arkansas. So I think Auburn is the kind of team that we won't know what we're getting week to week, and that's a game Vanderbilt has a chance to be dangerous and steal their own win if Auburn is even a favorite going into that game.
Well, Doug, it's interesting you say that. I wrote about this after the game. And again, in my mind, it was a bitterly disappointing game. It was one that was there for the taking with an A effort. They gave, I thought, probably more like a D effort, which has been probably the case so far this year. And by effort, I don't necessarily mean the kids aren't trying. It's just, how did you execute to your capability? They're still nowhere near where I think they can be. Does that make them an upper half of the SEC team? No, but I think it might make them more competitive towards the bottom. But I also said after the game, guys, and I didn't know how much this was going to ring true through the night. I said, you look at some games right now as I'm writing this, Kentucky's down at the half to Eastern Kentucky. You had a couple other games like that where just everybody across the league, not named Ole Miss, seemed to struggle. And Ole Miss got a break when Tulane's quarterback couldn't go. Now, Ole Miss had some injuries in its own right. That's worth a fair mention. But I'm going to do a thought exercise with you guys, okay? These are Vanderbilt's the remaining games. You guys tell me which games they absolutely cannot win. UNLV on the road, but they're favored. Yeah. Kentucky here won that one a year ago.
Yeah, they can win that.
Yeah. At Missouri.
Georgia.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, you look at it. Okay, Missouri here, they were that close to winning that one in Columbia a year ago. Florida on the road, beat Florida a year ago. Georgia, no, that's not going to happen. Bye week at Ole Miss, that's not a good matchup for them. Auburn, South Carolina at this point, who knows?
Yeah.
And then an off week before Tennessee, which is a tough matchup for them. But I only look at that schedule and say there's 3 games that are, maybe Ole Miss, but I don't feel good about that one based on watching a year ago. Every other game on the schedule, to me, they're not going to win them all, but they're there for the taking if they show up, in my opinion.
100%. So I see, what would that be, 6, call them swing games, toss-up games, and it's going to matter a lot whether it's in Nashville or not. But it would be hard for me to pick you going to Neyland Stadium and winning, but it's both in-state schools, so it's not impossible late season. So if you win even 2/3 of those swing games, that's progress that you can go sell on the recruiting trail.
Yeah. I mean, there's 9 games left. I think 3 of them are unwinnable. So that's 8 wins that are potentially on the table. Are they going to get them all? No. Again, I think that it was always going to be hard for them to get to 6 if they didn't beat Wake. They didn't do that, so their backs are against the wall a little bit. But I do think that there's a better team in there that we've seen than what we've seen so far. Now, if they play like they played, they might get a win at UNLV this Saturday. They might not. And beyond that, you can probably forget it. But I do think there's a better team in there than what we've seen. But at some point, you've got to show it.
Yeah.
Rob, I'm going to have to cut out, brother.
All right, Doug, thanks so much, man. Love having you on here. Doug Dean, AU Dose in Birmingham. Chris, let's switch gears now. And I will say this. They need criticism. I've always said this. If you're at a football school that has a basketball program, you always wonder what's it going to take to get them over the hump. Well, the fans have got to get as upset after a loss in basketball as they do in football. That's when that changes, and that's when the money comes, and that's when the support comes. The fact that you're feeling the way you do about it, you get the Vandy fan base needs to be that angry, and the coaches need to know, hey, we better step it up, man. We got a bunch of angry fans. Apathy is what will kill your program quicker than anything. And that's what you don't want to have. I like Clark Lee's demeanor. I love his comments. He's a hell of a defensive coordinator. He's a guy that went to NBA with Barton Simmons. They're trying to do a lot of different stuff in recruiting, but they can sell that Vanderbilt experience. They got over $10 billion in their endowment. There's a lot of things that they can sell. I want to switch gears now. Let's look at Knoxville over there with Tennessee. What are your impressions so far? They took care of business, 49-13 the first weekend of those 4 big matchups, LSU, Florida State, and the other ones. The one that the team that got the win was Tennessee, 49-13 over Virginia. Then they come back and they play Austin Peay. Not a great one. I don't know how excited they were, but you got to perform. What about Joe Milton and the job he's doing? He started a few games last year. I'm a believer in this guy.
Well, the numbers so far have not been super encouraging, and I've got this in front of me, and I'm not sure how many passes have gone to backups at this point. I'm not sure any. They're averaging 6.3 yards a throw if you take sacks out. A year ago, they were about 3 yards a throw higher than that, even with sacks. And that, of course, a lot of that was Hendon Hooker, who's now a Detroit Lion.
Yeah.
I'm concerned. Now, here's the thing about him. His mistakes, I don't think, are as costly as you would think. I mean, his accuracy is an issue with him. But it seems like when he throws the ball and he misses, nobody's catching it. And I think that's for 2 reasons. Sometimes it's way over everybody's head. Sometimes he'll short hop one. But here's the other thing: the guys that are going to pick him off are defensive backs, and a lot of times defensive backs are defensive backs because they couldn't catch the ball well enough to be receivers, which is probably why the last interception Joe Milton threw was 2021. So there's that. But I think the focus has kind of been on the wrong things, and I said this all off season. I thought their defense was a little better than given credit for being a year ago. The yardage numbers weren't great, but it's because they're on the field all the time with all the snaps. In fact, so far, Tennessee's averaged 75 offensive snaps and 70 on defense. So, of course, the yardage totals against you are going to be bigger. But they're disruptive. They are – I don't know if they're leading the country in stops for loss, but they're probably close right now. That disrupts a lot of third downs, gets you a lot of punts. They're forcing turnovers at a decent rate. They're averaging less than 4 yards a play against them. So that's number one. And number two, their rushing attack. They got the number 2 and number 5 backs in the SEC in rushing yardage. No, by the way, that doesn't include the guy that led them in yards per carry a year ago. They've got an identity that's apart from Joe Milton. And yes, they're going to need him to be great in the big games. Alabama, Georgia, name some other ones too, Texas A&M. Yeah. But I think the thing is the supporting cast around him can win in other ways too. And I think Josh Heupel's offense, the focus is always going to be on that. But I think that causes us to miss some other places where they're pretty good.
And when I look around the SEC, look at Mississippi State with Zach Arnett. And he's been there for 3 years as defensive coordinator. And I keep talking about this, and I don't know if people think I'm making a big deal out of nothing, but when you're a defensive coordinator in the air raid system with Mike Leach, you've got to learn to do things that most coordinators don't even think about. And they won 9 games last year. Right now, they got a good win in overtime against Arizona. That's still a Pac-12 team. And as a league, they're playing the best football top to bottom of any league in America, sadly, as this is their last year as a conference. And this is just the craziness that we were in. We'll work through it. But Mississippi State getting their own identity. What have you seen out of Will Rogers and their ability to play defense, offense, and certainly run the ball, which you have to do in this league?
Yeah, I'm not sure what their identity is at this point. I mean, it felt like they were trying to be the 85 Chicago Bears on Saturday. Will Rogers threw the ball 15 times. Now, again, looking at stats, I don't get that. I don't know that you want to take a guy who's been that effective and neutralize him that much. Here's my concern if you're Mississippi State. You were 5-1 in turnovers. You were a 10-point favorite or so at home, and it took you overtime to win that game. I don't know. Right now, State is averaging, 6.3 yards per running play and 5.6 per passing play, which is kind of interesting.
Yeah.
It's not turning the ball over at all. It's forcing turnovers at over a 6% rate on defense. That's not sustainable. I just said before the season, I've got more questions about them. I'm not saying that they can't be good, but when you were shifting from an offensive system to the one they were running to whatever this thing is, it's in transition. And now right now State's running the ball 48% of the time, Rob. That's not something that was ever on the table with Mike Leach. I just have a lot of questions about who they are at this point. Again, that's not saying they aren't good, but anytime you have a coaching change from a guy that was so out of the box like Mike Leach, the next guy is going to do things differently. You don't know what that's going to look like. And through 2 games, I thought they looked really good in one and were in some ways maybe lucky to win that one Saturday. I say in some ways because game flow is part of it. They got a 14-0 lead right until the last few seconds of the first half, and sometimes you play accordingly. So I'm not trying to paint with a broad brush here, but that game I think left a lot of people with some questions Saturday.
Yeah, and it is, and you have to go to overtime and establishing an identity, but you don't want to go out of your way to not be what got you 9 wins last year offensively. And there was questions brought up, and I think you even said it, and maybe Jake Wimberly, who's on with us from down in Jackson, the afternoon drive, ESPN 105.9. Last year, 4,000. This year, maybe Will Rogers struggles to get 3,000. Not that he's not a good quarterback and capable, but it's the offense that they're running. All right, I want to switch gears now. Let's go north, up I-65, 75, up to Lexington, KY, because you cover, again, Vanderbilt on top of them all the time with rivals, but also you know the league with your show, the Southeastern 14. Kentucky, Liam Cohen's back as offensive coordinator. Devin Leary leaves NC State. And What are you thinking about what they're doing so far? Are you impressed? A, B, C, D, or F?
C minus. Is that fair?
Yeah.
It's just not. I'm going to pull up the numbers to see if I can justify what I'm about to say. Well, and I don't have them in front of me. Oh, here we go. Okay. Kentucky's averaging right now 3.3 yards per rush play. I'm sorry, 6.0. I'm looking at the defense. So they're stopping the run. They're only averaging 7 yards per passing play. And I thought that would be higher. They brought in an ace quarterback. They've got a really, really good starting threesome of receivers. They've got a tight end room. They're not names that people know, but they really like. They bring in Liam Cohen. Maybe this is playing down to the competition, which I think Kentucky would hardly be the only team guilty of that so far.
Yeah.
But I wanted to see that number up closer to 10, right? I mean, they had so many issues last year. Pass blocking, they got Kenneth Horsey, their starting right tackle, and probably one of their best two linemen hurt early. No, they'll get him back at some point soon. That's going to help them a lot. But I'm looking around, and really they're not getting sacked that much either. So they're protecting their quarterback a little bit more, but it's just not happening. I don't know. That raises some questions because I thought Kentucky would be a little more assertive on that side of the football 2 games in.
Yeah, I did too, especially with the quarterback and Liam Cohen coming back. But I think the start of the season is a lot like a road race. 5K, 10K, you take your pick. You've got to get off to a good start and have a solid middle and a great finish. It's very difficult to look like crap the first couple of games and go undefeated from that point on. Your problems are going to be exposed in the first couple of games. Now, let's switch Texas A&M. I think Bobby Petrino's calling the plays. I think he will. But again, the culture at Texas A&M, they've got everything in the world going for them. I was talking to an A&M fan down here at the beach yesterday, and they sense that frustration. They've got everything they need: money, athletic facilities, donor base, recruiting, the number 1 state in America, over 400 Division I players a year. But in spite of the talent, you name me an area where they outplayed Miami down in the Orange Bowl Saturday in a 48-33 loss. Where do they go from here?
Well, to be fair, my attention was split on that game. I did watch it, but I was watching some other games, and so I may have missed something obvious. Look, they gave up a kickoff return that frankly should have been called back on a whole, but it wasn't. Here's the thing for me, okay? The offense has been okay, not spectacular. They're averaging around 6 yards a snap. I think you would have expected better through 2 games than that. But I got a quarterback in Connor Wegman who's really good. Unfortunately for him, he picked a bad time to throw the first 2 picks of his career. I think defensively, though, Rob, is where I have some questions. They have got as many 5-star guys on their defensive line as anybody. Their secondary room was allegedly one of the better ones in the country coming. And I say allegedly, I was right there with people. I thought they got experience at defensive back, and they ought to be pretty good. But they couldn't stop the run very well a year ago. They're giving up nearly 5 yards a rushing play right now. The pass defense has gotten worse than it was a year ago. I don't know. I think if you'd said we're going to have some problems with Texas A&M at this point of the season, you'd have probably said they were more on offense than defense. And I think that's the part. And look, it's 2 games in. But I think that's the part that's got people scratching their heads after this week.
It really is frustrating if you're an A&M fan, though, because you look at the recruiting and you look at this, and I'm going to get really technical. You can just pay people too much money. And if it's guaranteed and they don't have – I mean, if Jimbo Fisher is fired without cause, he's got close to $70 million he takes with him. I mean, he has nothing to worry about. He has generational wealth. I seriously believe you can make people to the point where they're not hungry. And that's a risk. Hey, I hope you can stay on with us. Franz Beard, GatorVetMedia.com is going to be with us after the break because we're going to get into, talk a little about the Florida-Tennessee game. There are a bunch of big games coming up. We're going to take a quick commercial break. Chris Lee with us, Vandy Rivals, and also the Southeastern 14. Check it out. It's a great show. Franz Beard, GatorVetMedia.com checks in with us. One of the great philosophers, great, most interesting men we have on the show, along with Frank Duffy. Right after this, hour number 2 is heading your way.
Unbelievably, every 2 minutes in our communities, a child is either bought or sold for sex. I am Ari Dickey, board member for the Nashville Anti-Human Trafficking Coalition. Join me and millions of others in our fight against human trafficking and for its victims by helping to educate the most vulnerable among us, our middle and high school students. Go to nhtcoalition.org, become a partner, and help keep our families safe, because none of God's children are for sale.
All right, Rob Browne. I know, Chris, you've got a few more minutes. Bring in Franz Beard. A lot of football, and again, Doug Dean mentioned this in the first segment, overreaction Monday. It's just what a lot of people – Monday's my favorite day of the week. I mean, people are tired and worn. I'm like, look, it's a day. It's a work day. You got those people in the office that'll say, well, Monday you got to recover from the weekend. Tuesday, I'm just getting back. And then Wednesday, it's the hump day. It's the middle of the day. So when do people actually work if they have that kind of an attitude? But I know I'm working. Chris Lee, great stuff, man. I got to compliment you. A professional in all respects, as is Franz Beard. Franz, you put out one of your best pieces ever last week talking about the demise of the Pac-12 with Larry Scott and Boris Karloff or George Kliavkoff, whatever. Just how they just took out the the Pac-12, and they're having their best year ever. And I talked to a lot of my Auburn friends that were out in California for 3 or 4 days. What a great time they had. And those Cal fans, that was a big game for them. I mean, that's what I love about college football. And certainly Cal better be getting used to these cross-country trips. But your state of college football, Franz, right now with the Gators, where they are as they get ready for Saturday in the Swamp. I don't think Tennessee's won down there since 2003. Certainly they won in 2001, knocked Florida out of the national championship race. But it's a big game Saturday in the Swamp.
They haven't won here since 2003, and that was the game. That was Ron Zook game where they threw a pass in the end zone, and the defensive back, in his infinite wisdom, decided not to jump. Their receiver jumped. Our receiver stayed flat on the ground. Their receiver caught the ball. Our defender didn't. I don't know what happened to him, but he moved back there, and I guess he thought the ball was going to hit him in his chest. But Tennessee won on that play. Strange things happened to the Vols here ever since then. We had the Antonio Callaway play that was really, really bad for some. I can't remember who. Was that Butch Jones? Yeah, it was. Butch Jones was here for that. And then we had the heave to cleave there at the end. That was when Ballpark Franks threw a ball about 75 yards on the fly, and somehow Tyree Cleveland, just catches the ball. I don't know how that happened. That strange things happen to the Vols here. I was here in 99. They had the undefeated season of 98 to win the national championship. And they came here with,
T.
Jamal Lewis was there and T. Martin. And they looked like, everybody thought they were going to just blow the Gators out. And then all of a sudden, Alex Browne, T. Martin still hears those footsteps.
Yeah.
5 sacks, an interception, a forced fumble, 9 tackles for loss. One of the great games any defensive lineman's ever had in the SEC. But this is a different year, and it's a different Vols team. I wrote today, if Florida can't protect the passer, Florida's going to lose this football game. And Tennessee's coming off a 7-sack game. They're 11 sacks this year, which is tied for number 1 in the country. 8 of them have come from that front four. That front four really gets after the quarterback, so much so that they really don't have to blitz a lot. And that's how you're going to give a team like Florida trouble, because if you can rush the passer with 4 and drop 7, there's not a lot of places to go with the football. So how well Florida pass protects is going to determine how well they win this ball game. Florida, I will say this though, having been there for Florida and McNeese, and I guarantee, yeah, it was McNeese. I understand that. But here's the thing. Florida's first 7 possessions, the Gators take it down the field at least 62 yards and score. They had 1 penalty on that entire 7 series stretch. And that was a delay of game, because the center roll, you're allowed a complimentary roll of the football. If you're the center and you come up there and you get everybody lined up, they give you that. He made a second roll of the football. They called that a false start. Go figure. But it didn't matter. Florida went ahead and just moved the ball anyway. But there were no holding calls, etc. So you have 7 consecutive drives without penalties and a perfect. One of them was an 11-play, 99-yard drive, and I think Chris can tell you this, having seen a lot of football as you have, Rob, that 99 yards, I don't care who you're playing, there is plenty of room to screw it up. And it's why it's so rare we see a drive that long sustained, because the longer Urban Meyer used to say, the longer you're on the field, the more chance there is of a screw up, which is why he liked people like Percy Harvin, who could, it only took him one play, boom, and you're in. Okay. But, Florida's in an interesting place. That defense is the real deal. The offense had a game that was much better. I question, can the offensive line do well with Jake Slaughter, the backup center? Still, we don't know this real status of Kingsley Egwakun. And Kingsley is not a dominating center as far as what I'm talking about as a blocker. But what you see with him is a very cerebral kid, and you don't see a lot of missed assignments when he's in the game. I mean, you watch him before he snaps the ball, and his pre-snap routine of pointing out who's got who and what. I don't know. There are too many centers in the country that are as good at recognizing the other defense as he is. If he's playing, Florida's got a lot better chance.
Yeah, it is. Chris, I know you just got a few minutes before you've got to get on. What's your take on what Franz said? I think he's right, but that cerebral part about the center, that's always your quarterback of your offensive line, and that is a big, big favor for the Gators to have.
Well, he hit on a couple things, either directly or indirectly, that I think are going to be important. First of all, discipline. The way that Florida has built its program under Billy Napier's discipline, which was lacking under its last coach. Right. Florida last year was one of the least penalized teams in the league and maybe the country. At least it was until late in the season. I don't know where they ended up, but this year Florida getting penalized 33 yards a game. That's a very disciplined team. Again, if you don't beat yourself, it makes it easier to win football games. Number 2, and this stat really jumped off the page last night as we were doing our previews. Tennessee's averaging 75 offensive snaps a game. Florida's defense is averaging being on the field for 47 snaps a game. That is a massive discrepancy. So is Tennessee able to complete? We talked about Joe Milton. I've said I think there's some other things with Tennessee that people need to be focusing on, but if he's wild with the ball, they're not converting third downs. Tennessee's not turning the ball over. Throw 1 or 2 of those in there. Florida obviously has a game control type offense with those 2 running backs, who I think are both very good. Unfortunately, they're running into a Tennessee team that's respectable against stopping the run. To me, with Florida, Tennessee's a better team. I trust Tennessee more to generate explosive plays and do the things that put points on the scoreboard. But I feel like Florida's got a potential strategy here with just trying to control the tempo of the game and not make mistakes. And if Florida wins the game, I think that's going to be the game script we look back on and say that's how Florida did it.
Yeah, that's a great take. Franz, that number only on the field, 47 plays, Florida's defense, and Tennessee averaging 75 offensive plays. That is, I've not heard a stat like that in memory.
Well, this is like this team is being built like the 1984 Gators that basically that was an NFL team, 3 first-round running backs, 5 wide receivers who played the entire offensive line plays in the NFL. That team controlled the ball so well that the defense was only on the field for 22 minutes a game, which is phenomenal.
Wow.
This team has only given up the third down conversion 5 times in 23 attempts. They're 7th in the country there. They're 3rd in the country in overall defense. And that's going to be the key for them is to get off the field. If you get off the field, particularly the way Florida runs the offense, and Florida lines up quickly and then lets the clock run. And people think when you line up quickly, you stop the other team from subbing, okay? Mm-hmm. And it doesn't mean you got to snap the ball immediately if you line up in a hurry. Mm-hmm. And that is one of Billy Napier's very interesting strategies is they will get lined up in a hurry to keep the other team from subbing, and then they'll let the clock go down to, say, 5 seconds, 4 seconds, snap, And it's a very interesting way of ball control. The shortened clock, I know Lane Kiffin is upset about it, and I am too. Why do we have to make the college game seem like the NFL? I don't think it's necessary. I know people are saying, well, we've eliminated 8 plays a game on the average from each team. Okay. Yeah. And that's 2 series for each team. And I don't think it's worth it. I really don't. I mean, you guys may have a different take on it, but I don't think it's worth it. I think the game was fine the way it is. But that being said, Florida is using this to its advantage. You can play defense with your offense.
Yeah.
Your offense stays on the field, grinds it out. And, if your offense can pick up, you think about this, if your offense can pick up 2 first downs every time they've got the ball, and let's say now instead of 12 series a game, which is what the average was, we're at 10 series a game, and you can hold the ball like the Florida can, you can really play good defense with that offense.
Yeah, you can. Chris, I know you've got to get going, but I want your response to that, and then let people know how they can follow you, keep up with all your great work. And as always, thank you so much for taking time out of your Monday to join us on Sidelines. We appreciate you and all of our guests, as our listeners and viewers are telling me. They said, get Chris back on with Franz. This is great stuff.
Well, thank you for having me. I'm sorry I didn't have a little more time today, but Mondays are crazy at our channel. And if you like this, go to Southeastern 14, because we're pumping out a crazy amount of football content in these what are now 7-day work weeks at this point. But yeah, I think we kind of sidestepped around the issue, guys. What we've cut out is more of what people tune in to watch, right? Major League Baseball, for maybe the only time in my lifetime, got something right this offseason. They shortened the games. They've cut out the things that drive people crazy. The games are 25 or 30 minutes shorter. I think the quality of play is as good as it's ever been. And I remember watching in August. I've got MLB package, and I'm watching. They got 4 screens up at once. And something stands out to me. Like, you can hardly find an empty seat in the view that we're looking at any of the ballparks. And sure enough, I go to look up. MLB attendance August to August at that point, it was mid-August, was up 13% over the previous year. And it had been up the prior month, and it's been jumping a little bit. And baseball is slowly making itself more interesting and relevant again because it has done the things that everybody asked it to do for the last 25 years or so.
Yeah.
It has given us more baseball and less standing around and less commercials. I remember I was at the Vandy game, and the breaks, and sometimes it's injuries, sometimes it's cramps. So this isn't all on TV, although I think they need to find a better strategy. When you've got a replay, when you've got a guy down, go to a break right then and there. Even if it's one or two commercials, go to a break and then come back and get some of those in, because I know those pay the bills. But the breaks sometimes are so long that you can come back and you have to reset, like, okay, who's got the ball? What's the situation? I just think that the game flow at times is awful. Cutting out the plays in a lot of ways, I don't think is the right answer. But look at the NFL. They've got this down to a science. Games last 3 hours. They get to the next one. They get in. They get out. Now, there are some things about the NFL that drive me crazy, and it's the touchdown, commercial break, kickoff, commercial break. That's horrible. But I think if the SEC were able and the NCAA were able to move this more in the direction of more game time and less commercials where we just all kind of zone out, it'd be a better product.
Yeah, I do. And speeding it up, but we better be careful with that. I mean, that's too serious, like Franz said. And you got your information out so people can follow you. That's so critical, but you're putting out great content, meaningful stuff. And this is not Overreaction Monday. It's Technical Breakdown Monday. I love this stuff. Chris, look forward to having you on next week. And they got to find the best. I love having you on Mondays because it's a great way to get things kicked off with the energy. But look forward to our next visit.
Hey, thanks, guys. Appreciate you having me on, and have a great week.
You do too.
Thanks, Chris.
Appreciate it, man. Love having people on that really, really squared away. And let me say something real quick about an event coming up, very important. Ronald McDonald House in Memphis, across the street from St. Jude Children's Research Hospital, having the Clays for Kids coming up Friday. It's a sporting clays tournament at the Memphis Sports Shooting Association out in Arlington, coming up Friday, September 22nd. They have two of the teams left, the $3,000, and you can call Chip Greer at 901-482-5680. And they have one of the 1,500 team spots left. There are two 4-person shooting teams right now. Reserve golf carts. Sponsor thank you on social media with your logo. Sponsor logo and website recognized on www.claysforkidsmemphis.com. Sponsor logo displayed at dedicated sporting clays stations. Ammunition provided. Verbal recognition at tournament. So this is a great cause. I've been down to the Ronald McDonald House. They have 53 rooms there across the street from St. Jude. And every day at the end of the day after treatment, the families come over there. Bless you, friends. And they stay there at Ronald McDonald House. They provide them with food, accommodations. It's an incredible support network for these people. And when you go there and you meet a family, they'll gather everybody in the room and say a prayer together for these people going through cancer treatment at St. Jude Children's Research Hospital. But there are two of the $3,000 teams and one $1,500 team left. We want to sell this out. It always does sell out. I've participated for years. Again, call Chip Greer, 901-482-5680. Franz, man, it's so much fun having you on because, again, you're a gifted writer. You and Buddy, can we get, God, Ben Troop. The Gator contingent on here is really strong. I'm looking at your daily thoughts that you just sent me. Holy cow. But let me get, before I say that, something interesting from a listener. This is interesting. Jethro Toll in Live Oak, Florida. USF could upset Bama this week, says Jethro. They looked good against Western Kentucky. Former Tennessee offensive coordinator is the new head coach at USF. They have a quarterback, reminds me of Vince Young. He can throw and run. It's a lot of optimism there from Jethro Toll in the jungle. But Franz, let's get to your daily thoughts, man. This is some great writing that you had this morning, and I'll let you let our listeners get your take on it.
Well, there's a lawsuit that I think a lot of people overlooked Washington State and Oregon State are suing the rest of the Pac-12 because under the bylaws, if these teams depart, which they have announced their departure, they no longer have voting rights. So that means the only two people that have voting rights are Washington State and Oregon State, and they intend to claim the entire Pac-12 assets, which would include this year's about $80 million to the league from the college football playoff. Plus, if you get teams in there, that's worth probably another $20 million, and they could do that this year. I believe that the Pac-12 is probably going to have a Final Four team this year. So you could be talking $100 million there. Over the next 6 years, you're talking $90 million minimum from the NCAA basketball tournament. The Pac-12 network is worth $40 million, had turned a profit of $40 million last year and has a net worth of $117 million. So they control these assets. But here's the important thing. That money would be good because they're orphans. They don't have a conference right now. But here's the thing they can do is they have a 2-year grace period from the NCAA. They are still a Power 5 conference for the next 2 years. That's guaranteed. So why don't they sit there and say, we've got this money, and in 2026, when the Mountain West contract expires and there's no exit fee for any of the 12 teams in the Mountain West, go out there and cherry pick, say, 6 teams. Go get Fresno. Go get Vegas. Go get Boise. Get Colorado State. Get Air Force. And get one of, maybe San Jose State. You get the Bay Area or something like that. That's all of a sudden an attractive league to somebody that's out there in a network and says, we got these late night ball games. Why don't we fill it up? These schools are not going to be competing for recruits on the East Coast anyway. So it's the perfect fill time for, people, like Southern Cal says, oh, we do not want to be on at 10 o'clock at night on the East Coast because our recruits aren't seeing it. Oregon State says, we don't recruit over there. So by golly, the only people who are going to see us are the kids we want to be seen by. They're going to be happy with it.
Yeah.
They could end up with a contract that maybe pays $18, $20 million a year, which wouldn't be so bad. It's going to be interesting, though. It's going to go to court. I mean, that's a given. Everything goes to court these days and times. But if the Oregon State and Washington State win this lawsuit, the Pac-12 becomes whatever it is. They may get 10 teams more and still be a 12-team league. But here's the thing, Rob. They still become a power conference under the current format of the college football playoff. What does the college football playoff say? The 6 highest rated conference champions. That's probably going to be one of them. Gets an automatic berth in there. They're no longer group of 5. They get a big slice of that pie. It's going to be very interesting. It's good. It's something that is overlooked, but it is going to disrupt college sports with this expansion mode that they're in. Now, granted, it may be the end of the demise of the Mountain West, but the Mountain West, goodness, you think those teams give a rat's ass about that when they could go over and be part of a power conference league? And now all of a sudden, they're saying in this new format with the new college football playoff, the Power 5 conferences are all going to get about $150 million. Okay, that's $10 million a school. If you got to, it's going to be interesting, though.
It is. And before we go to the break, I'm going to say this. For a lot of these schools that have tried for years to get into the Power Five that are group of five schools, I think now they can go to their donor bases and say, look, man, we've got a chance to step it up. Go back in the 70s when Arizona State and Arizona were kind of out there in no man's land. They got invited to the Pac-12, and that was really good for them financially for a long time, not so much lately. But I think all this shifting around is going to create a lot of new storylines, and it's kind of exciting. It's certainly not dull, and we're going to talk about it. We're going to take a quick break here on Monday's edition of Sidelines. Franz Beard, GatorBaitMedia.com with us. Wess Moore checks in from the capital city, Little Rock. We'll get his take on Hogs over Kent State this past weekend. KJ Jefferson and that Arkansas defense, folks, they're getting after it. They look really, really good. But we got a lot to talk about here on Monday after this quick commercial message.
Unbelievably, every 2 minutes in our communities, a child is either bought or sold for sex. I am R.A. Dickey, board member for the Nashville Anti-Human Trafficking Coalition. Join me and millions of others in our fight against human trafficking and for its victims by helping to educate the most vulnerable among us, our middle and high school students. Go to nhtcoalition.org, become a partner, and help keep our families safe, because none of God's children are for sale.
All right, Rob Browne back with you. Friends, you look around at college football right now. We've covered a lot of what's going on in the SEC just from this past weekend. And it's not, it's not certainly for lack of effort and a lack of hype. Really hadn't talked a lot about Alabama's loss at home to Texas. But, boy, Quinn Ewers is just a much better quarterback. But what would you expect? Steve Sarkisian coaching him. And I think Quinn Ewers is all in for being the Texas quarterback. And again, experiment, you've got one rat in a cage. He's kind of calm. You put another in there, the testosterone goes up. You've got Murphy, the backup quarterback, the big kid out of California at Texas, and Arch Manning. Those guys are human. They're hearing all this, like there's this coronation. Arch Manning will come in and just be the starter immediately. It just doesn't work that way. Competition is good. And Texas did not lack confidence Saturday night. But they're, A&M is the one that just – I keep saying this, and we have Olin Buchanan covers A&M for us, texags.com. They have every resource in the world. And this is year 6 for Jimbo. And they go down there and they just get hammered 48-33 on the road. We all know it's not a conference game, but you schedule these big conference games. And if the SEC wants to go around saying, we're the best, to hell with the rest of them. We're the best. You got to win these big non-conference matchups. And so far, they're terrible.
Well, you look, Florida lost to Utah.
Yeah.
That was ranked against ranked. The Aggies lost. I think the Aggies are in trouble. I really do. I think that's an 8-4 team, maybe 7-5, and that's not going to sit well with their fan base. This is 6 years, and particularly with Texas going to be part of the SEC next year, and as much money as the Aggies have, only God and the Longhorns have more, and they do, and if Texas is back, Texas will own the state, and they will get 9 out of the 10 top recruits in the state will go to Texas, particularly if Texas is in the SEC. Texas in the Big 12 was formidable as far as recruiting, But you put Texas in the SEC now, it is going to change that dynamic considerably.
Yeah.
And I got to tell you, the Aggies, I think the Aggie fans are getting nervous with good reason to be nervous. I think they got a game looming up in a couple of weeks with Arkansas, and quite frankly, from what I've seen of both teams, I'll take Arkansas any day of the week in that game.
Yeah.
Even though Arkansas's running game really isn't clicking yet, that's one of these things that was Sam, because that guy Sam Pittman, he's pretty good coaching up offensive lines.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
At some point in time, that offensive line gets it together.
Yeah.
And I think the Aggies are in a situation where we're going to start hearing people talk about buyout money. And this is a program that paid $450 million in cash to redo their stadium, did it in 2 years, and it was all done without any financing. They got the money. They just go tell old Jim Bob over there, hey, write me a check for $7.5 million. You got 10%. Oh,
yeah.
Why can't I do 20?
Yeah. I'm with you. I mean, I've been getting a lot of stuff from people that have covered Texas for a long time. He said throughout the state of Texas right now, there is the powerful smell of mothballs of all these Texas fans coming out. And, they're not saying we're back. They don't need to. They got to quit saying that. But I tell you, I don't think it's helping A&M. But it's helping Arkansas because they're going to be playing Texas, and they're going to be back in the media every day in the state of Texas. And let's go to our man from Jacksonville, Texas, Wes Moore, ESPN 103.7 The Buzz in Little Rock. And you're up there. You cover the Hogs. From your days growing up in Texas, how big Texas A&M, Oklahoma, the Arkansas, Texas. And now they're going to have hopefully a rivalry. They go to the 3-6 plan, so Arkansas can play Oklahoma every year. I just think that's such a natural rivalry, although I think they've only played 15 times since 1892. But, Wes, again, you are the man in the natural state. Welcome to Sidelines. Let's talk some Razorbacks. 28-6. It's a win. It's always better to win than lose. But what were your takeaways from Saturday?
It was disappointing to see the run game not be able to establish itself and be dominant, honestly, after watching what Central Florida was able to do to Kent State the week before. I just really thought Arkansas would be able to run the ball at will, and they couldn't. And they weren't able to until the fourth quarter, that very last drive of the game. Now, you can look at it as, that's the positive from it. When it mattered, or when they wanted to run out the clock, and when the opponent knew what they were going to do, Arkansas was still able to run the ball. So that's the encouraging thing. But the discouraging thing is they just weren't able to do that early in the game. And honestly, the defense, while holding their opponent, Kent State, to 2 field goals and 6 points, early in the game, Kent State was able to control the game. In the first half, Kent State controlled the game, getting first down after first down, and they were using the entire play clock. I thought what Kent State tried to do was very smart. They tried to shorten the game, and they did. Arkansas only had 7 possessions. Well, let me take that back. They had 9 possessions the entire game. 1 possession was at the end of the first half when they had the ball with 30 seconds at their own 10-yard line.
Yeah.
And Arkansas just took it to the half. Then there was the last possession of the game when Arkansas ran out the last 6 minutes of the game. And, they could have scored, but they didn't run up the score or do anything like that. So you think about that. Kent State did a great job of shortening the game, but part of that's on the defense. You got to get off the field. They did a great job against Western Carolina in week 1, getting off the field, forcing 3 and outs. I think Arkansas had 1 3 and out the entire day, and they were able to keep Arkansas off the field, their offense off the field, by getting first down. So being nitpicky, look, you win 28-6, you take care of business, you're 2-0, but I think fans wanted to see a better run game and get off the field for defense so that your offense can get back out there. They just weren't sharp. I'll just say that. KJ wasn't sharp. Receivers dropped balls. running backs missed holes. Sometimes they just didn't follow their blockers, and then sometimes they didn't block. So not the crispest game for Arkansas.
Yeah, and Franz mentioned this in the previous hour about the new clock rules and the way that the game. It's a couple of possessions. It's 8 fewer plays a game. That's 2 possessions, and I mean we're not seeing. We're seeing it. It's showing up. You just said Arkansas only had 8 or 9 possessions for the entire game. Franz, great take on that.
2 hours and 45 minutes. That's how long that game was.
The average prior to this, we'd gotten up to 3 hours and 3 hours and 38 minutes, and then 3:32. Say that again. This is a Major League Baseball game.
2 hours, 45 minutes.
Wow.
Here's the thing that bothers me about this, and previously Chris had made this point, and I thought it was a very good point. Why don't they just say this? Okay, if you got a replay, we're going to do a commercial break. So it's 2.5 minutes. You get it done in 2.5 minutes, and if you can't get it done in 2.5 minutes, the call stands. I think if they did that, it would light a fire under these replay people, instead of saying, well, gee, don't we have a drone that's 20 miles out that we could zoom in on this and get that angle? It's ridiculous. You know, you got 4 angles. Say, okay, you got 4 angles to look at this and get it right. And if you can't get it right in 2.5 minutes when the commercial comes back, that's it. And I think you would do as much with that as you do shorten it, to stopping the clock to move the chains.
My question is, have you ever heard of anyone say college football is too long?
No.
I enjoy it. I mean, give me more, not less college football.
Yeah, I think the problem has been those games when it's 120 degrees. But again, we're not trying to shorten up what we love. I think there some subtle changes can be made. But yeah, it's going by. The games are going by really fast. And then you just think about it, Wes, you're in TV, Fox Sports Channel 16 sports anchor, folks. Great job he and his team do covering high school, college, all the stuff in Arkansas. But you got 15 minutes of time you got to fill. I can understand a couple of minutes, but there are going to be some long conversations on the field after the game if they finish up at let's say you got a 3:00 start and they've been allotting, I think, 3.5 hours. So they're going to have to change some programming, Wes, aren't they?
Well, for the networks, they usually just roll on to the next game or go to a studio show. But there were times they weren't allowing enough time, and you would that would be the frustrating thing. You're waiting for your game to come on, and you get moved over to ESPN Plus or the ESPN Classic, and you had to go find the game. Or now you don't have to worry about it, at least, because the games are getting over with a little bit quicker.
Yeah. 2 hours and 45 minutes. That's holy cow. I got a quick question for you. Rocket Sanders out of Rockledge, Florida. Franz, not too far from Gainesville, I don't think. They say swollen knee again. I graduated from medical school. When? Never. But swollen knee. They held him out. Arkansas's got some running backs, but Rocket is the best. Him and Quinshon Judkins of Ole Miss, it's a debate who's the best running back in the SEC. Do you expect him back Saturday?
I do not. I'm hopeful that he'll be there for the LSU game the following week. And it's pure speculation. I'm thinking it's, like little MCL. They had to go get that knee looked at. But they don't believe it's a lengthy injury. So that makes me think, usually an MCL injury, a little tear or a little strain of the MCL is 2 to 3 weeks. And that would put him on par to get back for the first SEC game. So I don't expect him to play this week against BYU.
The real question with that's going to be, how does he tolerate pain? He's 242 pounds. He's used to inflicting it. But some of these guys, when they, they get a hangnail. It's like we used to have this thing. The Orlando Magic had a guy named Ken Strong who was from Xavier on the team, and they had Horace Grant. Horace Grant would get a hangnail and he'd miss 3 ball games. Ken Strong would sever his leg with a chainsaw on the day before and use a barbed wire tourniquet to stop it and still play. Yeah. And the question with me about Rocket is how does he handle the pain? Because, I've seen guys with the MCLs and they can run afterward and everything like this, but they tell me when they run, they run with pain. So what's your take on that?
Well, I know he's been at practice, not practicing, but he's on the sideline working out and doing some individual drills. So that tells me that, he's dealing with the pain issue right now, and that he's in a sleeve, they say, on the sideline. So Rocket's a guy. He'll be there. If they clear him, he'll be there for that LSU game.
Yeah, and look, that LSU game is looming, but BYU, Wes, I thought that was Arkansas's most impressive win of last year, going out to Provo and winning, because we talk about it a lot because it's a big deal. Those guys, a lot of their offensive linemen, defensive linemen, when you're 23 and 24, banging heads with 18 and 19-year-olds like Patrick Kudus at right tackle, who's just turned 19, that's a big deal, Wes.
Yeah, that was a surprise. The ease that they went out there. I think they scored 28 straight points at one time. Just got that offense really going, and BYU couldn't stop them. Going out there, I thought it was a toss-up game, and Arkansas went out there and won rather comfortably. So they lost a lot. You know what? BYU lost a lot, but they were also coming off of a stretch where BYU, I think they were banged up. They were worn out mentally and physically. I think Arkansas caught them at the right time last year. And you got to think, how competitors are. BYU got a little embarrassed last year. They want to come back, and they're going to hit the road. They want to try to take care. I remember a couple of years ago, Arkansas went out to Lubbock, and Alex Collins, rest in peace, ran all over the Red Raiders. And Arkansas in the fourth quarter, it was just Razorback fans in there because Texas Tech fans had already gone home. Arkansas just ran all over Texas Tech. The following year, Texas Tech came to Fayetteville and just stuck it to Arkansas. Now, part of it may have had something to do with this guy named Patrick Mahomes, but Texas Tech came into Fayetteville and got a little payback. So that's kind of in the back of my mind. Now, I don't think BYU's got a Patrick Mahomes, but I got to think they're looking for a little payback.
Yeah. I think that's going to be a really good game, Franz.
Well, that's a game that non-conference game. Quite frankly, that I think the SEC has got to win, and BYU comes in there with Keaton Slovis. I think this is what his 12th school in 3 years. But there's no doubting the kid has got a really, really good feel for the game. He can throw the ball all over the place, can make all the throws. And I think, Arkansas has just got to do what they've been doing. Pin your ears back, see the quarterback, kill the quarterback. And that's got to be the mentality. And if they do that, I think there's no question they take care of business. But I got to tell you one thing about it. These guys come in there, they are SEC big, maybe even bigger. And that's the one thing you're going to have to handle. They are big and strong, and they come in there with all these Polynesian kids who just, there's something about the way those kids play that is always impressive. These Samoans and Polynesian kids come in there, and they just have a different motor than everybody else.
Yeah. I mean, Wes, this Arkansas
this
team,
is interesting in the fact that I was just going to say neither one of these teams have really played anybody. We don't know what they are. With the BYU playing Sam Houston State and then another, an FCS team. What was that? Southern
Utah.
And look at Arkansas' schedule. They played an FCS team, and then they played Kent State, that's rebuilding. So I don't think we know a whole lot about either Arkansas or BYU.
Yeah, and that's the part about it. I mean, and then you look at teams like LSU in the first game, they had to play Florida State, who's a really good team. And LSU may be a really good team, but when that game late was really close, and then in about 7 minutes, 3 touchdowns for Florida State. I like playing good teams early. I think it does get you, because if you get beat badly in the first game, it can serve as a wake-up call. If you play easy competition, you wonder, and then you're going into the third weekend. I look for Arkansas to have their breakout game, the first one of the year, really. I mean, Western Carolina notwithstanding. But I think that KJ Jefferson, he's got Dan Enos working with him. He's a great quarterback coach, Wes. That right there, if I'm an Arkansas fan, gives me a lot of confidence.
Yeah, KJ the first week was awesome. I think he had 5 incompletions this week, and not as good. He missed a couple of throws they were poor throws, honestly. But he also had a couple drop passes. So it was a combination of things. And I think I said it, drop passes, bad pass. You had running backs missing holes that were there, and they didn't trust that hole. And then there were times there was just no push whatsoever, nowhere to run. And so, on the big picture, it's just little things that they got to clean up. But I think a lot of people do have faith in Enos, and I know they have faith in KJ Jefferson. Look, KJ at one point just took the game over and started running the ball. And I was a little surprised in the pregame show. Coach Pittman said they were going to run KJ more. They didn't really run him against Western Carolina, but they said we want to run him today because he needs to get used to it. He needs to, he needs to get in the flow of things because he's going to run the ball a lot this year. And so we're going to go ahead and take the leash off and let KJ run. That's honestly, guys, that surprised me a little bit. And he did. In the second quarter, there was fans were frustrated. The team was frustrated. And KJ just put the team on his back, ran down the field. But what I don't like, he took a couple licks. Now, sometimes he was the guy doing the licking. Yeah. But that still hurts. You put your shoulder down and run over a guy, you do that enough, after a while, that shoulder starts to hurt a little bit. And so it makes me a little queasy seeing KJ do that time after time after time, especially against a team like Kent State. If you're going to do it, let's do it against LSU. And, in a game that really, really matters.
Yeah. Well, another thing, too, the defense for Arkansas, I was impressed the way they played. They got a pick 6. That helped to spark them a little bit. But Great crowd there. Everybody was into it. I think the expectations for Arkansas fans are to win every game. That's what you want to have, isn't it, Wes? I mean, and Franz, you got to agree. If you're not out there thinking, okay, we're playing to go to Atlanta, what are you doing?
Well, Arkansas's got a team that is interesting because I don't think there's a team on the schedule that they can't beat. And by the same token, I don't think there's a team on the schedule remaining that can't beat them for the most part. So they've got to, they need all the moving parts working to be able to beat everybody. But, Wes was making a point about KJ. KJ is what, 6'4 and a half, 6'5", 250 pounds. You get that guy outside the box, and all of a sudden you got a 180-pound cornerback wondering, am I supposed to tackle this guy? When he has a full head of steam. Yeah. You're going to see a lot of people with brown stains on the back of their pants because KJ Jefferson broke containment. You don't worry so much about him if you're the other team, if it's one of your linebackers that's there within the box.
Yeah.
But let him get outside the tackle box, and that is a frightening human being to have to confront. And I think, Wes, you're right on with that. This is the guy. It's what we're seeing like in the Pac-12 right now. The Pac-12 is the best league in the country, top to bottom right now. Why? Because 11 of their 12 teams have really good quarterbacks. Yeah. Although Some of them are on their ninth stop, in 3 years. I mean, they've transferred in and everything like that. I was looking at it the other day. Penix is a transfer. Cam Ward's a transfer. Bo Nix is a transfer. DJ is a transfer at Oregon State. And on and on and on. Caleb Williams down at
Southern Cal.
So on. But this is the SEC is a league that I think is quarterback deficient, which is why the SEC is not what the SEC has been this year. And you look at that, and KJ is the best quarterback in the league, period. But you can have, I know LSU people argue about Jaden Daniels and so forth like that. I like Jackson Dart a lot. But that being said, the best quarterback in the league is KJ. And he does have that ability to put a team on his back. And I think that like I said, Arkansas, they're in the game Arkansas can't win. There's a game they can't lose too.
Yeah.
But I like their chances.
Yeah, and I think it's a great take. And folks, in the midst of all this talk, I can't help but say this. People, and I think Southern Miss is going to be a pretty good football team this year. The Fighting Will Halls, he's doing a good job of rebuilding that program. Florida State beat them 66-13. Chief Osceola and the folks in Tallahassee are getting that win over LSU. That I think they're just getting started. Mike Norvell can coach, but Wes, look, about out of time. I've got to pack up and get on the road back to Memphis from Orange Beach. It's tough to leave. I'm looking out over the bay and here on the beach. This is tough, but Wes and Franz, both of y'all, great stuff. Most often we see the face of Christ in the least among us. We live in the greatest country in the history of the world. We have the best guests, the best sponsors, and the best viewers. Thanks, all of y'all. Wes, what are you going to be talking about on your show today? Who's at the Touchdown Club there in Little Rock? And how do people follow you and keep up with all your great work? Because we really appreciate every time you're on this show more than you can imagine.
Got Tony Dorsett today, former Cowboy, Pro Football Hall of Famer. Very excited about that. And kind of fitting after the Cowboys ran all over the Giants last night. We got Tony Dorsett at the Touchdown Club. So we'll be talking to Tony Dorsett. We got Clint Sterner coming on. We're going to talk about the Razorbacks, the Red Wolves, the Bears, and got a lot of high school football to talk about too besides the Cowboys and the Razorbacks. So it's going to be a fun show. Looking forward to it. Join us, 1037thebuzz.com, or go download the Buzz app on your app store.
Look, man, this is a great time of year, but I really, really appreciate your take on Arkansas, getting that information out there. And folks, look, we have run out of time. Franz Beard, GatorBaitMedia.com. Catch him on the Buddy Martin Show Monday through Thursday nights. Great content as always. Thanks, everybody, for listening. We're going to go ahead and wrap it up a couple of minutes early so we can get on the road. Like I say, having to leave Orange Beach is like walking away from the dinner table at Thanksgiving. But this is some of the best conversation we've had in a while, and we're just getting started, folks. See you tomorrow.